Sustained stretching and skin rolling are two very different techniques, but they both fall into the same category of technique. They're both part of our connective tissue massage, or CTM. So although they're quite different, they have a common goal. In this video, we're going to look at each of those techniques. Sustained stretching and skin rolling are both aimed at treating adhesion, or sticking, in the layer of fascia between the skin and the muscle, what we'd call the subcutaneous fascia. Sustained stretching is a little bit more gentle. It looks to free up movement between the skin and the underlying fascia. Whereas skin rolling is a little bit more dynamic. It's going to lift the skin away, creating more space between the skin and the muscle, thus opening up space within that subcutaneous fascia. So let's take a look at the sustained stretching first, because this is typically the milder of our two techniques. So I'm going to demonstrate this on Alison's calf. When we start off, we need to evaluate which direction is the tissue restricted in. It might be just one direction, or it might occasionally even be both. So if I place my hand on the skin and I stretch up, we'll see that there's very little movement. When I stretch down, it's a little bit more pronounced. So stretching up, in this case, is the direction to go for Alison, because the tissue is more restricted in that direction. So I want broad applications. I'm going to use full contact with both hands. I'm going to get down into quite a low lunge, because one of the principles here is that if we approach the body at a low angle, our pressure stays quite superficial. The more we increase the angle, the deeper we're going to penetrate into the tissues. Because our target layer is just under the skin, we want to get down into this low lunge. So I'm aiming to have the angle of my arms somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees in relation to Alison's leg. Then I'm going to slowly lean in, building stretch, but I don't really want to move on the tissue, so I'm holding this position. Now we can add a little enhancer here. What we can do is we can slightly pulse. So every 3 or 4 seconds, I'm easing back a little bit. This is just enough to allow for capillary refill. So this means I get kind of a dynamic pump of fluid through the local tissues, because I'm squeezing and releasing. I'm not releasing enough to let go of the stretch on the tissue, because it is the sustained stretch that's going to give me the release. That's called a viscoelastic response. And fascia, particularly the subcutaneous fascia, responds really well to that type of sustained stretching. So I'm going to need to hold this for a minimum of 30 seconds, up to a maximum of 2 minutes. Now that's a pretty big variable. So how do we know when it's 2 minutes, and how do we know when it's just 30 seconds? Well, simple answer is, the more stuck it is, the longer you're going to hold for. When we're learning, we can release maybe after 30 seconds and compare. Before I let go of my stretch, I'm going to do a little bit of side-to-side motion, what we'd call shear. And then I'm going to ease back out. Now I can retest, and we can see the skin is already moving a little bit better. Not quite as free as it was in the other direction, so I might decide to repeat the technique. I could stretch for maybe another 30 seconds. So leaning in, gradually building the stretch on the tissue, about every 3 or 4 seconds, just slightly reducing. So you can see I'm in quite a low lunge here, and I can control how much body weight I'm putting through my hands by how much I press my forward leg, my front foot, into the floor. As I press down with my front foot, I back off slightly on my pressure. As I let off, I can lean onto my hands with more pressure. So very simple, very easy way of controlling this, and my upper body really just stays static. It's easy to do because pressure is coming down through the bones. We get what's called stacking of joints, and it means that muscles are only engaged in stabilizing joints. They're not providing the power for the movement. Again, I'm going to do a little bit of shear force, side-to-side motion, before easing back out. Let's reevaluate. More improvement again. The tissue is moving a little bit freer. So let's take a look at our more dynamic technique here in our connective tissue massage. We're going to do a little bit of skin rolling. Now, skin rolling is a more dynamic technique, but it can also be a little bit more sensitive. Always in therapy, I want to keep the intensity below 4 out of 10 on a pain scale. So I can modify by simply going slower if this is a little bit painful, or lift less tissue. Those are the 2 changes I can make in order to reduce the intensity. So here's how we're going to apply the technique. I'm going to start off by pushing into the tissues with my thumb, and then I'm going to use my fingers to roll the skin back to my thumbs. So this will determine how much skin I actually lift. I really want to think in terms of almost wedging my thumbs between the skin and the muscle, that I'm really trying to get under that roll of skin to a certain extent. How's the intensity, Ali?
1.
1, it's pretty low. Okay, so our sustained stretch to begin with has acted as a good preparation, a good warm-up. So the intensity is a little bit lower, which is good news for us and good news for the client. So pushing with the thumbs, gathering with the fingers, just be careful not to squeeze the skin between fingers and thumbs, that I'm just using the fingers to create a friction grip on the skin, roll it back onto my thumbs, and it's the thumbs that are really doing the dynamic work. I'm going to work my way across the calf and start back again. Push with the thumbs, gather with the fingers, lift that section of skin and roll it across. If it's too painful to roll continuously, we can lift a section and let it go, lift another section and let it go, even holding for a moment in between. If the tissue is very free, we can push with the thumbs, gather with the fingers, and even introduce some C bends or S bends. Start moving that tissue a little bit more dynamically. How's the intensity there, Ali?
2, 3.
2, 3. Okay, so a little bit more intense. And because the layer of fascia that we're working on is multi-directional, we're not stuck to just working transversely. We can try, which might be a little bit more tricky, working up along the length of the tissue. A little harder to grip there, so I might switch my tactics here. Push between my hands to lift a section of skin and see if I can roll that. And that's going to be pretty low intensity. How's that, Ali?
1.
Yeah, 1. We're not getting that much lift. We can also move diagonally in either direction. How's that now?
2, 3.
2, 3, a little bit more intense. So if the tissue is quite free, don't be afraid to lift it very strongly. In some areas of the body, like the back, we can lift this very dynamically. If we're being too gentle, we're really not making significant enough change, and we're not really maximizing the treatment outcomes. So you do want to lift the tissue as much as you can while keeping below 4 out of 10 on a pain scale. So in summary, we would say that connective tissue